each one of us sees ourselves as missionaries, if each one of us, we love our neighbors. Now this is what I call the unproject, because the project usually has a beginning and an end. There's no end to this. Now see, some of you are, you're like, you put an A+ at the top of your sheet because you know your neighbors and you know their hearts and hopes and you've done that. But realistically, what else can you do to love your neighbor? What's the next step? Maybe you've never shared Christ with them. Maybe you haven't done something that you know you should do. So this is the unproject. It's not, oh, well, it's over, that kind of thing. And I want to say this also, that you don't love your neighbors so that they can become Christians. You love your neighbors because Jesus tells you to. And let me tell you the difference between that. You may have this grumpy neighbor who doesn't talk to anybody, and he will never come to Christ. But you still have a responsibility to love that neighbor. A friend of mine, he said that he lives in Denver, and he said every snowstorm, he shovels the lady's house right next to him, her driveway. And he said he shoveled her driveway for 2 years before she talked to him. And then she said, I'm really embarrassed when she finally talked to him and said, I've been watching you and I really appreciate you shoveling my driveway. Why did you do that? Of course, he had an opportunity. Interesting enough, though, the other neighbor on the other side of him started shoveling half of the driveway before he would get there, and he would shovel the other half. See, it was making an impact. He was loving his neighbor. It was making an impact farther than his neighbor. How do you do this? I got some rhyming words because I'm a preacher. Okay, the first thing is at the bottom there, obey. Just obey the command to love your neighbor. Number 2, and this is, in my opinion, the most important one, is to pray. Pray for your neighbor. Tracy and I, when we moved into our neighborhood in Newcastle, we went online, and it's real easy. You can find all your neighbors' names. It's kind of a scary deal. Their social security numbers. No, not all that. But you can find their names, And so we wrote down their names. And we started every day during our quiet time praying for our neighbors. This was in December. We've only been here 7 months. This was in December. And, in December, you don't meet anybody because, they drive in, they turn, But we've been praying for them. And I just want to say this, don't talk to your neighbor about God until you talk to God about your neighbor, okay? And God will open the door for you if you pray for them. And you know what? I'm a coward. Can I just tell you that? I'm a missionary, and I'm supposed to be, this Apostle Paul, but I'm kind of a coward. So I pray for myself that God would give me boldness. Sometimes I want to go help them, or sometimes I want to say something, and I need Jesus to change me sometimes. Or sometimes I don't want to go help them, And so I need Jesus to change my heart. And so I pray for myself. So obey, pray, play. And what I mean by that is, and we haven't even talked to them about Jesus, but I find that if we will play with them, and what I mean by that is a barbecue, have them over for dinner, or if that's your thing, or maybe a Christmas party, maybe a Easter egg hunt for the kids, or maybe camping. Maybe you guys like to camp and go camping with one of your neighbors, play cards with your neighbors, do something, play with your neighbors, get to know them. And then the next one, obey, pray, play, stay. you know, this is not instantaneous. This is a long-term deal. Some of you have been living in your neighborhood a long time, and you know how long it takes to get to know people and to have the opportunity to share Christ with them and to love on them. And but realistically, I think that what would happen if Fellowship of the Rockies took this seriously, and in the next 5 years, each one of you reached one of your neighbors. And then in 5 years after that, you guys each reached another neighbor. It'd be awesome. It'd be awesome. Stay. And you know, this is the other thing. Sometimes I think when I say stay, what I mean by that is stick around. When neighborhood has a barbecue, go to it. You know, say no to church, whatever you have to do so you can be in your neighborhood. So you can get to know your neighbors. And then the last one, of course, is say. And Romans 10 says, "For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher?" Now, they're not talking about me. They're talking about a proclaimer. They're talking to you. You need to say. And I promise you this. That God, if you pray, God will help you, will open the door so you can say. And you don't even have to force it. You don't even have to force it. You know, I've been doing this for just 7 months. And really, I've been working in my yard, and you know, take your barbecue to the front of your house instead of the back of your house, you know, or do anything you have to do to be around. Go for walks, do whatever you have to do. But we were coming home. We go to a house church because that's what they have in Newcastle, Southern Baptist Church, a house church. So we go to a house church. And so we are bringing our crock pot from our house church on Sunday night and taking it out of the car, and I'm carrying it. And Paul, my neighbor, he says, "Oh, you got a potluck or something?" And I said, "Yeah, we go to a house church." And I said, "We eat before we have Bible study, and we have Bible study together." Paul's a Catholic, and he says to me, me and my wife need that. Can anybody go to that? I went. I couldn't believe it. But it wasn't Brad, it was God. It was God. And I really think it's because we prayed. And we said, "God, we're not going to manipulate this. We're not going to make them our project. We're going to just be obedient to you." And we understand it may take years. It may take years. How are we going to win the other 10 folks that don't know Christ? You got to do it. I got to do it. We got to do it. And if we just do it in our neighborhood, and then maybe do the same thing where we work, we can fulfill the mission. We can fulfill the mission.